Hi friends! Would you like to read some Bible stories with me? Today we will be reading Joseph and his brothers, Moses in the Bulrushes from the Old Testament. Joseph and his brothers. Jacob settled in Canaan with his 2 wives Leah and Rachel, his 11 sons and his daughters. Then Rachel died giving birth to her 2nd son named Benjamin. But of all his sons, Jacob loved Joseph the most, as he was the first son of Rachel, Jacob's best loved wife. Jacob made no secret of his love for Joseph. He gave the boy a splendid wool coat in shades of bright blues, purples and greens. This made the other brothers jealous, and they hated Joseph. They hated him even more when he told them about his dreams. "In my dreams," Joseph told them, "you all bowed down to me." Even Jacob was angry with Joseph for being so boastful. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to a distant valley to check that his brothers and their flocks of sheep and goats were well. When the brothers saw him coming, one said, "Let's kill him. We'll tell our father that he was eaten by a wild animal." "No," said another brother, "we mustn't kill him. Let's put him in that dry well over there." They stripped off Joseph's coat and put him in the pit. Just then, some merchants with camel loads of spices passed by on their way to Egypt. The brothers took Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. Then they smeared Joseph's coat with goat's blood and took it to their father. "We found this coat, but don't know who it belongs to," they said. Jacob at once recognized the coat, and when he saw the blood, he thought Joseph was dead. He was heartbroken. The merchants took Joseph to Egypt and sold him as a slave to Potiphar, who was the captain of the Pharaoh's guard. Joseph was alone in a strange land, but he knew God was with him. He worked hard, and Potiphar was so pleased with him, he put Joseph in charge of the household. For a while, all went well, but then Potiphar's wife fell in love with the handsome young man. Because Joseph remained loyal to Potiphar and refused to love his wife in return, she began to hate him. She told Potiphar lies about Joseph and that he had attacked her. Potiphar was furious. He had Joseph flung into the Pharaoh's prison. The prison governor liked Joseph and soon put him in charge of all the other prisoners, including some of Pharaoh's servants. One had served the Pharaoh his wine, and another had been Pharaoh's baker. When they had strange dreams, they told Joseph about them, and Joseph was able to explain what their dreams meant. A few days later, just as Joseph had predicted from their dreams, the Pharaoh had the baker executed, but took the wine server back into his palace. Joseph had been in prison for 2 years when the Pharaoh had a strange dream. He asked his wise men what it meant, but no one could explain it. Then the wine server remembered Joseph. The Pharaoh had Joseph brought from the prison, and the Pharaoh told him his dream. Joseph listened carefully. Then he said, "Your dream means that for 7 years there will be a good harvest with plenty of food for everyone. Then there will be 7 years of bad harvests, when the people will go hungry and even starve. If you are wise, you will put someone in charge who will store grain from the good harvests so there is food for the people during the bad ones." The Pharaoh was so pleased with Joseph, he gave him fine clothes, a gold ring and necklace, and a chariot to ride in. He made Joseph a governor and put him in charge of all the stores of food in Egypt. For 7 years there were good harvests, and Joseph arranged for the surplus grain to be put into safe stores during the 7 years of bad harvests. Joseph had plenty of store food to sell to the Egyptians and to other people. The harvests were bad everywhere, and far away in Canaan, Joseph's father Jacob and his family were growing short of food. Jacob kept his youngest son, Benjamin, at home and sent his other 10 sons to Egypt to buy grain for bread. "I've heard they have plenty in the storehouses there," he said. When the brothers reached Egypt, they went to the governor and asked if they might buy grain. They bowed in front of Joseph, but didn't realize that this man dressed in the fine Egyptian clothes was their brother. Joseph recognized his brothers immediately. He spoke to them very sternly. "You're spies who have come to spy on Egypt," he accused them. They protested that this wasn't true, explaining that they were 10 honest brothers, that they had left one brother at home with their father in Canaan, and had another brother who was dead. They had only come to buy food, they said. Joseph had his 10 brothers put in prison for 3 days. Then he released them. "You may go now, but you must leave your brother Simeon here in prison, and when you come again, you must bring your brother Benjamin with you." The brothers loaded sacks of grain on their donkeys and began the long journey home. They didn't know that Joseph had secretly put the money they had paid for the grain into the sacks. When the 9 brothers stopped to rest and eat, one of them found the money in a sack of grain. They were all very frightened. "God is punishing us for selling Joseph," they said. They hurried back to their father Jacob and told him everything that had happened to them. When Jacob heard that the governor had kept Simeon and that the brothers had to take Benjamin back with them, he was very unhappy. "Joseph is dead, Simeon is in prison, and now you'll take away my youngest son Benjamin? If anything happens to him, I'll die of grief," he said. After a while, when all the grain had been eaten, Jacob had to send his 9 sons to Egypt again to buy food. This time they took Benjamin with them. Again they bowed before the governor and asked to buy food. They still didn't realize that Joseph was their brother. Joseph ordered his servants to give them and Simeon a meal in his house, making sure that Benjamin had plenty to eat. The next morning, Joseph had the brothers' donkeys loaded with sacks of grain, and again he had the money they had paid put back into the sacks. He had one of his silver cups hidden in Benjamin's sack. The 11 brothers began their journey, but they hadn't gone far when some of Joseph's guards caught up with them. They searched the sacks and found the silver cup in Benjamin's sack. The brothers were terrified. The guards marched them back to the governor's house, where Joseph waited for them. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "You may all go except Benjamin. As the silver cup was in his sack, he must stay here and be my servant," said Joseph. "Please let us take Benjamin home with us," said Judah, one of the brothers. "Our father has already lost one son. If he loses Benjamin, it will break his heart. Let me stay here instead." Joseph knew that then his brothers had changed and were sorry for what they had done to him long ago. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold as a slave," Joseph cried. "God sent me to Egypt, where I am Pharaoh's governor, to save you from dying of hunger. God promised Abraham that the nation he founded would be safe. Go back to my father and ask him to come and settle in Egypt. Bring all your wives and children and all your herds of animals. There will be 5 more years of bad harvest and hunger, but there is plenty of food here. Then Joseph hugged Benjamin and his other brothers and wept with joy. Joseph gave his brothers food for the journey back to Canaan and new clothes and presents for his father. When Jacob heard that Joseph was alive and well, he was overjoyed and agreed at once to go to Egypt. He and his 11 sons settled there, with all their families. The man from God who had fought Jacob in the desert long ago had told him that his name should now be Israel. So Jacob's family in Egypt became known as the children of Israel. Moses in the bulrushes. Many years passed and Jacob's descendants, who were known as the Hebrews, grew into a large and powerful nation. Joseph lived to be a very old man, but after he died, a new cruel Pharaoh ruled Egypt. He was afraid that the Hebrews would join forces with Egypt's enemies and take over the country, so he made them his slaves. He forced them to work on the land and to build great cities and temples. All day they toiled, making bricks of mud and straw, which were baked hard in the hot sun. Guards with whips watched them and beat them if they stopped or tried to rest. Although they were now slaves, the Pharaoh was still frightened of the Hebrews. He made a new law and ordered his soldiers to kill all the Hebrew baby boys as soon as they were born. One Hebrew mother managed to hide her new baby son, Moses, in her house for 3 months. As he grew older, she was afraid the soldiers would hear him crying and would find him and kill him, so she decided she could keep him no longer. One day, she picked up Moses and hurried secretly down to the riverbank. There, she made a basket out of reeds, covering the outside with clay and tar to make it waterproof. When it was finished, she laid the sleeping Moses in it. Then she put the basket gently down on the water among the bulrushes and pushed it out on the great Nile River. Her young daughter, Miriam, was hiding in the reeds. She watched the basket float away down the river and followed it, walking along the riverbank to see where it would go. Soon the Pharaoh's daughter and her maids came down to bathe in the river. The princess noticed the basket floating among the reeds and ordered one of her maids to bring it to her. When the princess looked at the sleeping baby, she said, "This must be a Hebrew boy." At that moment, Moses woke up and cried. The princess felt so sorry for the tiny baby, she decided to keep him. Miriam was watching from among the reeds, and she heard what the princess said. She ran to her and bowed very low. "Do you want a Hebrew nurse to take care of the baby?" she asked. "Yes, bring one to me," ordered the princess. Miriam ran to her mother and told her what had happened. Together they hurried back to the princess. "Take care of this baby for me. I'll pay you well," said the princess. The mother was delighted to be able to take her baby son home, knowing that now he was safe. Moses lived with his mother and the rest of his family until he was old enough to go back to the princess. Then his mother took him to the palace. "He is my son now," said the princess, and his mother left Moses to be brought up as an Egyptian prince. I hope you'll join me for some more Bible stories.